Hello and welcome to our morning edition of Arirang News. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. President Lee Jae-myung called for stronger defense cooperation between Korea and NATO members as he made his NATO summit debut in Türkiye. He suggested that Korea and the alliance move beyond simply buying and selling weapon systems toward a new partnership focused on jointly developing, producing, and operating defense systems. U.S. President Donald Trump, who also arrived in Turkey for the summit, sharply criticized NATO allies, saying the U.S. wasn't treated very well during its conflict with Iran. He also reignited tensions with the alliance by repeating claims that Greenland should be controlled by the United States rather than Denmark. Tensions are escalating again in the Middle East as the U.S. launched strikes on Iran and reimposed oil sanctions following attacks on commercial vessels in the Strait of Hormuz. Both Washington and Tehran accused each other of violating the ceasefire agreement. We begin this morning in Türkiye, where President Lee Jae-myung is attending this year's NATO summit. On its first day, President Lee attended the summit's Defense Industry Forum, where he called for expanding defense cooperation with the alliance. Our Blue House correspondent Song Yoo-jin, who is traveling with the president, reports from Ankara.
Korea is a trusted partner built on shared values and proven capabilities. That was President Lee Jae-myung's message as he made his NATO summit debut on Tuesday.
신뢰할 수 있는 파트너인 대한민국의 안정적인 생산 역량과 검증된 기술력이 나토의 오랜 노하우와 합쳐진다면 양쪽의 안보 역량은 지금보다 훨씬 강력해질 것이 분명합니다.
Speaking at the summit's flagship Defense Industry Forum, Lee said Korea and NATO share the painful memory of war and a common commitment to defending democracy, freedom, and peace. To further strengthen those ties, the president proposed upgrading defense industry cooperation in research and development.
단순히 무기 체계를 거래하는 현재 방산 협력을 넘어 무기 체계를 함께 연구하고 함께 생산하며 함께 운용하는 한 나토 방위산업 파트너십 2.0으로 격상해 나가기를 제안합니다.
The Blue House says this would improve interoperability, reduce maintenance costs, and allow both sides to jointly upgrade defense systems. Korea and NATO also announced the launch of negotiations on a framework procurement agreement following talks between President Lee and NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte.
Once the agreement is concluded, Korean companies will have an institutional foundation to participate in NATO's joint procurement market, estimated at around 15 trillion won, roughly $9.9 billion US.
In a separate meeting on the same day, NATO and its four Indo-Pacific partners, Korea, Japan, Australia, and New Zealand, agreed that cooperation among like-minded partners is becoming increasingly important. The group session was first introduced at last year's NATO summit in The Hague.
The Blue House says President Lee's NATO trip is aimed at broadening Korea's diplomatic horizon, with a particular focus on expanding defense cooperation with the alliance, whose members account for more than half of global defense spending. He is expected to continue that effort on Wednesday through bilateral meetings with war leaders. Song Yoo-jin, Arirang News, Ankara.
In Korea, the United States and Japan have agreed to speed up the deployment of small modular reactors overseas, with the signing of a new memorandum of cooperation on the sidelines of the NATO summit in Ankara on Tuesday. Foreign Minister Cho Hyun, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and Japanese Foreign Minister Toshimitsu Motegi signed the agreement during their first trilateral foreign ministers meeting of the year. The framework will begin with the Indo-Pacific before expanding cooperation to other partner countries. It aims to bring together the complementary strengths of the three countries' civil nuclear industries, supporting joint business consortia, project financing, and capacity building in recipient countries. SMRs are an advanced class of nuclear fission reactors that produce up to 300 megawatts of electric power. And U.S. President Donald Trump has sharply criticized several NATO allies, accusing them of abandoning the United States during its recent conflict with Iran, while renewing calls for U.S. control of Greenland. His remarks at the NATO summit in Turkey drew swift pushback from Denmark and Greenland. Our Lee Seung-jae reports.
U.S. President Donald Trump said Tuesday that he may not have attended the NATO summit in Turkey if it not had been hosted by Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan. Speaking in Ankara, Trump criticized several NATO allies, accusing them of failing to support the United States during its conflict with Iran.
But we weren't treated well because we did something in Iran. We don't need anybody's help. I didn't even want their help. But before I asked, they said they wouldn't be there.
Trump said countries including Italy, France, and Germany made clear they would not back the U.S. in the conflict, arguing that Washington has consistently supported its allies while receiving little in return. He added that the United States did not need their help, but questioned why it should continue spending heavily on the alliance if its partners were unwilling to stand with it. European leaders have said they do not want to be drawn into the conflict with Iran, noting they were not consulted before the military operation. However, they have expressed a willingness to help safeguard shipping through the Strait of Hormuz following the fighting. Trump also reignited tensions within the alliance by repeating that Greenland should be under U.S. control rather than remain part of the Kingdom of Denmark.
Greenland doesn't help Denmark. Denmark doesn't spend money to really help Greenland, but it's an important part for the United States. And it's surrounded by China ships and Russian ships. That should be controlled by the United States, not by Denmark.
The issue has long strained relations between Washington and Copenhagen, both founding members of NATO. Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen rejected Trump's remarks, saying she expects allies to respect Denmark's sovereignty and stressing that Greenland is not for sale. She added that there were no plans for NATO leaders to discuss Greenland or broader Arctic issues during the summit. 이승재, Arirang News.
And now for more on this year's NATO summit in Ankara, we're joined today by Dr. Christopher Goding, Professor of Political Science at Korea University. Professor Goding, thanks for coming on today.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
So, at the NATO summit, President Lee Jae-myung called for expanding defense cooperation with NATO, and while meeting the NATO chief, they agreed to begin negotiations on a framework procurement agreement. How will this help promote Korea's defense industry among NATO members?
Oh, numbers say it all. I mean, the figure was cited in your news clip. The whole procurement agreement is estimated at roughly 15 trillion won or $10 billion. So it is definitely huge. And the reason for this is that Korea is producing technology, in particular chips, that other countries, and in particular NATO countries, don't. And also because of the situation in Ukraine, and also because the US is pressuring other NATO members. NATO countries now have to buy these weapons, have to buy this technology fast. And it is a technology they don't produce. So Korea does produce it. NATO needs to move fast. And so therefore, this represents a huge opportunity for the Korean armament industry. So something, again, like $10 billion or 15 trillion won, so something immense, definitely.
I see. And President Lee's there after Korea lost its bid for a Canadian submarine program to a German shipbuilder. So given that South Korea is not a NATO member, would you say it's still significant that Korea was able to compete so closely with Germany? What does this tell us about the global competitiveness of Korea's defense industry, and what challenges does it still face?
I don't know the details. I don't know the specifics of this particular bid. You know, sometimes that's how market economy works. Sometimes you lose, sometimes you win. So what I can tell you is that first, as you mentioned it is in itself significant that Korea could participate despite being no NATO member. And also, if negotiations are taking place, it is also because the NATO, all of these NATO members in the future are intending to purchase Korean technology. So let's not react in an overheated way to this particular bid that was lost. And of course, we need to move on. We need to look forward to other bids that are to take place in the near future.
And more broadly, President Donald Trump said he's very disappointed with NATO on the first day of the summit. What do you make of him using the summit to step up more pressure on European allies to increase their defense spending?
Well, what I believe is that President Trump is using every single tool at his disposal. The US now, as you know, the situation the way it is, the operation in Iraq was a disaster. President Trump's position is growing increasingly weak domestically, and it's been a constant of this Trump's administration to try to withdraw from NATO so that other NATO members, in particular in Western Europe, finance their own defense. So all of this is in the continuity of the Trump administration. Basically, Trump likes to pose as a businessman. He wants others to pay. And so here, nothing new under the sun. This NATO summit is definitely in line with all other interventions that Trump has been trying to push for overseas since he's been elected.
I see. And ahead of this NATO summit, Russia launched another massive airstrike on Kyiv. And with the war now dragging on for more than 4 years now, how would you assess the current state of the conflict, and to what extent can the NATO summit help sort of create momentum for a diplomatic resolution to this war?
Not much, I'm afraid, because for the moment, this conflict in Ukraine is frozen, unfortunately. Russia, as we can tell, cannot manage to invade Ukraine, despite all of these strikes they're launching. Ukraine is not able, for very obvious reasons, to invade Russia either. So for the moment, no party is able to take the upper hand over the other. Putin does not want to negotiate. Zelensky is in position to resist for the time being. So unfortunately, I don't think much is to happen in the next weeks or months. What is most concerning about this conflict in Ukraine is that for the moment, we cannot see any light at the end of the tunnel. The situation is growing increasingly conflictual, with strikes happening not only in Ukraine, but also on Russian territory, as for instance with these images you're displaying right now. And there is no resolution to be expected in the next weeks. And I don't see how this NATO summit could do anything about it, unfortunately. So the short answer is no, I'm afraid.
I see. All right, Professor Gordon, thank you so much for coming on today. We appreciate it.
The pleasure was mine. Thank you.
Korea posted a record current account surplus in May, supported by robust semiconductor exports. The Bank of Korea said Wednesday that the country's current account surplus reached $38.61 billion in May. The figure marked the largest monthly surplus on record, up by more than $10 billion from the previous month. The country has now recorded current account surpluses for 37 consecutive months. Strong exports fueled the surplus as overall exports rose 62.9% on year, and semiconductor shipments surged more than 160%. Over in the Middle East, the United States has launched strikes on Iran and reimposed oil sanctions following attacks on commercial vessels in the Strait of Hormuz, while both Washington and Tehran accused each other of violating their ceasefire agreement. Our Cho Young-eun reports. The U.S. has carried out a series of strikes on Iran after 3 commercial vessels were attacked in the Strait of Hormuz. U.S. Central Command said on Tuesday that the strikes were carried out to impose heavy costs for targeting and attacking commercial shipping crew by innocent individuals in an international waterway. Iran's demonstrated aggression was unwarranted, dangerous, and a clear violation of the ceasefire, CENTCOM said in a statement posted on social media. The U.S. Treasury also revoked the 60-day sanctions waiver that had temporarily exempted Iranian crude oil, petrochemical products, and petroleum exports from U.S. sanctions. The waiver had authorized the sale of those products under an interim agreement reached between Washington and Tehran as part of a ceasefire deal. This comes after a series of attacks on commercial vessels in the Strait of Hormuz. According to the UK Maritime Trade Operations, a Qatari tanker caught fire off the coast of Oman on Tuesday morning Gulf local time after being struck by what it described as an unknown projectile while transiting the Strait of Hormuz. Iran condemned Washington's decision to revoke the waiver, calling it a violation of the Islamabad Memorandum of Understanding. In a statement, Iran's foreign ministry said the U.S. Treasury Department's decision is a clear breach of Article 10 of the memorandum, under which the Treasury Department promised to allow Iranian oil exports. The ministry said the move, coming less than 20 days after the memorandum was signed, demonstrated the U.S.'s bad faith and accused Washington of repeatedly violating the agreement. It also warned that Iran would take any measures it deems necessary to safeguard its national interests and security in response to what it called the U.S. breach of the agreements. Cho Young-eun, Arirang News. South Korea has urged the office of the U.S. Trade Representative to reconsider its proposed 12.5% tariff over forced labor concerns, calling the measure unwarranted and disproportionate. The South Korean embassy in Washington submitted its comments on Monday after the USTR proposed tariffs on South Korea and dozens of other economies following investigations under Section 301 of the 1974 Trade Act. In its submission, the embassy says Seoul shares U.S. concerns about eliminating forced labor from global supply chains, but argued there is no sufficient factual basis for claims that South Korean imports burden U.S. commerce. It also highlighted the country's efforts to combat forced labor through stronger domestic laws, international commitments, and policies encouraging businesses to remove forced labor-linked products from their supply chains. And ongoing around the Hawaiian Islands is the world's largest international maritime exercise, RIMPAC. There, the U.S. gave a tour around its naval assets that are usually not easy to get a glimpse at. Our Kim Bo-kyung files this report from Honolulu.
Dominating the waterfront at Hawaii's Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam is the USS Theodore Roosevelt, the U.S. Navy's 4th Nimitz-class nuclear-powered aircraft carrier.
I'm aboard the nuclear-powered aircraft carrier USS Theodore Roosevelt. Its massive flight deck is nearly the size of 3 soccer fields.
The carrier, which made a port call in Busan in June 2024, is capable of operating nearly 70 aircraft from its flight deck and hangar bay. Reporters were able to see aircraft, including the EA-18G Growler, mainly used for electronic warfare attack mission, and F-18 Hornets. When asked about China's recent test launch of a long-range ballistic missile into the Pacific Ocean from a nuclear-powered submarine during RIMPAC, the commander said he's aware.
We are aware of the missile tests conducted. We're constantly monitoring events throughout the world and making sure that we have awareness of what's going on around the world. There's been no specific changes to address that, but we are aware of that.
Aside from the aircraft carrier, the U.S. Navy also had its amphibious assault ship, the USS Essex. Housing what is similar to a community hospital, it has 4 operating rooms, intensive care facilities that can treat up to 15 surgical patients, and a dental clinic. The MV-22 Osprey tilt-rotor military aircraft was also on the flight deck.
With the Osprey, we can go over 1,000 miles from the site of a disaster from this ship. and deliver aid, or we can go from the disaster to the ship where there's actually a hospital about one deck below us. And so if anybody needed help or evacuation, we would bring them using the Osprey to the ship. We would treat them, and they would get them where they needed to go.
With some of the U.S. Navy's most advanced assets on display, RIMPAC highlights the scale of American naval power and, more importantly, the significance of cooperation among maritime partners. 김보경, Arirang News, Honolulu.
Good morning, I'm Choo Ji-hyun, and this is The World Now. In Syria, 2 bombs detonated on Tuesday morning near Damascus hotel where French President Emmanuel Macron had spent the night. The blast injured 18 people and raised fresh security concerns for Syria's new government. Macron's motorcade had left minutes before the blast. Authorities said security forces were defusing the devices when they detonated, and that one bomb was in a parked vehicle, another in a trash bin. No group has claimed responsibility. Macron continued his agenda, meeting Syrian president and announcing France would restore 51 million euros in seized assets and discuss military cooperation against extremist organizations. In New York, authorities on Tuesday had to evacuate several blocks of Midtown Manhattan after a tower was found to be at risk of collapse. Engineers on a residential conversion project discovered buckling columns and sagging floors, forcing the evacuation of surrounding blocks, including a school and a consulate. Fire officials said the steel frame design would prevent total collapse, but warned of localized failure. New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani said crews had conducted floor-by-floor inspections and would install emergency support beams. The 1,600-unit project faced previous safety citations. Mayor Mamdani said the top priority is the safety of those who live and work in the area. Over in the UK, Prince Harry and 6 other claimants have lost their privacy case against the publishers of the Daily Mail. A High Court ruling on Tuesday dismissed claims of unlawful information gathering against associated newspapers after finding no evidence of phone hacking or document fraud. Harry mounted a decade-long legal battle seeking accountability for what he described as a relentless invasion of privacy affecting his family. A spokesperson for the publisher called the ruling an, quote, overwhelming victory for the Daily Mail and its journalists, and added that the case had wasted the court's time and resulted in legal costs amounting to almost $67 million. Argentina rallied from 2 goals down to defeat Egypt 3-2 in Atlanta on Tuesday and advanced to the World Cup quarterfinal. Yasser Ibrahim and Mustafa Dziko had given Egypt a 2-0 lead before Christian Romero pulled one back in the 79th minute. Lionel Messi scored the equalizer 4 minutes later, and Enzo Fernandez completed the comeback in stoppage time. 39-year-old Messi wept after the final whistle as Argentina kept hopes of retaining the World Cup alive. Argentina will face Switzerland on Saturday in Kansas City after the European side beat Colombia in a penalty shootout.
Hope your morning commute wasn't too bad. Rain has been lashing down on central Korea since dawn and is spreading across much of the country. Heavy monsoon rain is forecast through tomorrow. Until then, Jeollado provinces and Chungcheongdo provinces could see up to 200 millimeters of downpours, while the capital area, Gangwon-do and Gyeongsang-pukdo province could receive up to 150 millimeters. So please stay alert for flooding and landslides. Meanwhile, the Gyeongsang-do provinces remain sweltering hot with a heat wave advisory being in place at a high of 32 degrees Celsius over in Daegu. But you know that humid air will make it feel a lot muggier. And this afternoon, Seoul will be getting up to 27 degrees Celsius, Gwangju at 29 degrees, but Jeju will be hotter at 32 degrees. The rainy season will continue through tomorrow, and once the rain clears on Friday, the heat will get stronger again.
Now that's all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at noon Korea time. Thanks for watching.
A country where traditional and modern cultures coexist.
Where you can explore spectacular landscapes and nature.
Savor the delights of traveling at every turn.
Where? Korea, of course.
There are some must-visit places in Korea. Ones that appear in every tour guidebook: Hangang River, Gyeongbokgung Palace from the Joseon Dynasty, and
Yes, these are essentials, but I want to go somewhere a little different. I don't have to follow the guidebook. For example, filming locations for K-pop music videos or K-dramas and movies.
traveling is all about taking it slow. A long walk at your own pace, or even zoning out somewhere quiet. Doesn't it sound relaxing?
You travel for the experience, trying something new in a foreign place, de-stressing and making lifetime memories, taking tons of pictures along the way.
70% of the Korean territory is mountainous. Naturally, hiking is a very popular pastime in Korea. Not your kind of activity? Trust me, the view will make the effort worth it. Just catch your breath by the cold stream in the valley.
Korea is surrounded by the sea on three sides. From the beach, you can enjoy a wide open view as well as various water activities. But the riverside is great too. There's plenty to see and do.
If you're in Korea, you can't miss the night view full of dazzling lights.
Yes, even the same place can have a totally different vibe at night.
Want to make unforgettable memories?
How about traveling to all corners of Korea? Join us next time to explore more about Korean culture.
혈액형은 ABO 또 AB형 날 들킬까봐 매일 나를 숨겼어 I'm sorry 어떤 사람이 되고 싶었던 걸까 그런 사람이 되면 행복해질까 내 몫에
held its first debate over the weekend.
The economy is expected to expand 2.5% this year.
Boosting Korea's ties with its global partners on the sidelines of the Status UN summit.
It's a massive drone attack on Ukraine overnight on Monday and Tuesday.
Arirang.
We're here to bring a new type of news show.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Bringing news just for you. It's Wednesday, July 8th here in Seoul. I'm Isujin, and this is News Generation. Joining us today is Fabio.
Happy Wednesday.
Happy Wednesday. We also have Brooke with us.
Hello, nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. And both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. So we're officially halfway through the week, and with summer in full swing, many people are starting to pack their bags and head off on vacation. Airports are getting busier, hotels are filling up, and many people are counting down the days until their next getaway. So let me ask you, Fabio, do you enjoy traveling?
So Jenny, how can that even be a question? Of course I love traveling, and every summer that I have spent in Korea so far, I make sure to either visit other countries in Asia or going back to Spain to visit family. I'm not sure if it's good or bad news, but I have a lot of work this year. So I might not be able to go abroad, but I'm still quite excited about exploring different places inside the Korean peninsula.
So do you make an effort, do you think, every year to at least go somewhere new?
Always, always.
Wow.
So even if it's not abroad, maybe Jeju Island?
That's a good one. That's a good one. What about you, Brooke?
Gosh, I'm kind of the opposite. But coincidentally, I am traveling this week. I'm going to the United States for a baby shower. The baby of my family is having a baby, so very exciting news. I also have some birthdays in the family, and my best friend, it will be her birthday. She actually used to live here in Korea with me, and she's been on the show a few times, but now she's living in the US again, so I am going to her to celebrate her birthday together. But honestly, I tend to travel for occasions like that, for a wedding, births, birthdays, performances. I don't like to travel just for traveling's sake. I think because I'm not a very good traveler, I get motion sickness, and as I've gotten older, my jet lag has gotten worse. So please pray for me in the upcoming weekend. I'm going to do my best. Honestly, I think I burned through all of my travel luck just coming to Korea. I'm pretty proud of myself that I made it here and I live here now. And I also enjoy just traveling around Korea itself. It's a bit less commitment than going, overseas. And there are so many places in Korea to see, which we're going to talk about today.
Right, so that's a great reminder that travel isn't always just about sightseeing. Sometimes it's simply about being there for the people who matter most. So we're going to talk more about this, but first, let's take a look at the screen. Travel is one of the most popular ways to unwind, broaden our horizons, and experience new cultures. And as Korea continues to attract visitors from around the world, new travel trends are emerging, with more tourists looking to go beyond the typical sightseeing spots in search of authentic local experiences. Today on News Generation, we take a closer look at what visitors love to do in Korea, the latest travel buzzwords taking over social media, and share some must-know tips for young travelers looking to enjoy a true daylication in Korea. Just as you saw in the video, travel today is becoming less about checking off famous landmarks and more about experiencing a destination like a local. And Korea is no exception. The country continues to welcome a growing number of international visitors every year. But how has the way people travel within Korea changed over the recent years, Fabio?
Well, first, we need to look at how many people are actually visiting Korea these days. So if we take a look at the screen, we can see that the number of foreign visitors to Korea Korea in the first half of this year increased by 23% compared to the same period last year. That means that the number of visitors went from 3.87 million last year to 4.76 million this year. And as the Korean wave continues to grow, more and more international travelers seem to be very interested in choosing Korea as their next destination. And recently there's been a huge rise in different travel trends. So instead of simply visiting famous landmarks or tourist attractions, it's more about people wanting to experience something that they haven't seen countless times on social media or pictures. More about feeling like a local and doing real local activities. So with Korean entertainment pretty much maintaining an unrivaled popularity, I would say that a tourist activity in Korea could become something a little bit more ordinary, like grabbing a coffee at a specific neighborhood, or maybe even shopping where locals do.
Right. So it's interesting how simply seeing Korean online is no longer enough. People now want to experience that lifestyle, that real lifestyle for themselves. And that shift is also changing where tourists choose to spend their time. So where are foreign visitors spending more time these days compared to the past, Brooke?
That's right. In the past, I think when you think of, big tourist destinations in Korea, you think of Namsan Tower, the place with all the locks, or going to Myeongdong where the street food is. And when my family visited recently, we did go to those places, but we also went to Noraebang and did fun things that locals also enjoy. So a lot of people these days are going to places like Cheonggyecheon Stream and Hangang Park. These are, again, places that locals frequent more so than the landmark destinations. In fact, according to data analysis, foreign visitors to Cheonggyecheon and Hangang Park, Yeouido and Bampo increased by more than 30% compared to 2017. We're also seeing people frequent more neighborhoods that locals enjoy, like Jamsil, Sincheon, Hongdae. I used to live in that area when I went to Korean Language Institute, Ohakdang at Seoul University. So it's filled with a lot of young people, a lot of students. It's very vibrant, great atmosphere. And another place that we're going to talk about later is Seongsu. And what's interesting about a lot of these cities is that they don't have these huge landmark destinations like Gyeongbokgung Palace or the Namsan Tower, but people still really enjoy them because they get to go to a bakery, they get to go to a pop-up store, go shopping, do these really daily, everyday life activities. And we're going to be talking a lot more about these exciting places as we go today.
I think it's a phenomenon we see more often because people are coming again. There's more repeat visitors. They want to try new things. So this really shows how travelers are moving away from traditional sightseeing checklists and toward more authentic local experiences. And this shift is especially clear in Korea's travel trends among international visitors. In fact, there's actually even a term that captures this new way of traveling. So what do we call this new trend of traveling like a local? And I guess what does it look like in practice?
Well, exactly. In Korea, there's actually a term, as you said, which is dailycation. So you can think of it as a combination of the words daily and vacation. So instead of focusing on famous landmarks, it's about enjoying the everyday experiences that locals have. So the Korea Tourism Organization divides dailycation into 4 main categories. So as we can see on the screen, for fashion and beauty, visitors show a lot of interest in Korean beauty salons, hair salons, and beauty products that are both trendy and relatively affordable. So popular stores, beauty chains, and fashion brands have become must-visit shopping destinations before people leave Korea. And in the food category, visitors are still interested in traditional Korean cuisine, but they're especially drawn to the everyday foods that they often see in K-dramas or Korean TV shows such as samgyeopsal or drinks at a cafe, street food. And things like having Korean fried chicken at the Han River Park, or even that is amazing, or trying soy sauce marinated crab, which is 간장게장, which is one of my absolute favorites, by the way, continue to be incredibly popular. And at the same time, more and more visitors are making reservations to try dishes that may sound a little bit more adventurous, but are quite common here in Korea, such as grilled eel, galbi, or yukhae.
Oh, I'm getting hungry.
I'm so happy to hear because I feel like some of them are, some of the typical tourist foods are kind of overseen, overheard, but then I feel like, like you mentioned crab. I feel like that's very local.
Completely.
And it's very good as well. So, but dailycation go well beyond actually food and beauty. So what else are travelers doing to experience everyday life in Korea, or daily life in Korea, I guess?
Well, continuing on with the categories that we saw earlier, we have the accommodation and relaxation category. So this would be things like going to parks, like the Hangang Park, and having that delicious fried chicken. That's become very popular. For For hobbies and leisure, our final category, tourists are interested not just in shopping and going to these pop-up stores, but also in things like one-day classes or personal color analysis. They also enjoy things like hiking, going to festivals, and of course, instant photo booths. We always see those on every corner. Now, moving on to Seongsu, which I said I was going to go over again because it's just such a cool place. It is one of the hottest areas, especially for millennials and Gen Z tourists that come to visit. It's known for its neutro vibes, and that's a combination of new and retro. So this was an area that used to be very industrial. It was full of shoe factories, in fact. And these have been repurposed and transformed to give you a very raw urban aesthetic wherever you go. They actually call it the Brooklyn of Seoul. So needless to say, people flock there. They say that it's a place where you can enjoy a day in the life of the trendiest Seoul locals. So the hippest people, that's where they go, is Seongsu. They have cafes, they have a lot of fashion boutiques, they have these brand pop-ups that are very temporary, so of course that brings more people in, and of course a lot of beautiful photo spots. Now, in addition to Seongsu, we mentioned earlier hiking. Hiking is another big part of the dailycation trend. I don't know if a lot of people know this, but Korea is very mountainous. I think it's something like 70%. Even just when you're walking to work, it's not flat. It's very, you get some exercise. There's some incline. So just within 5 minutes of where you live, you can probably walk and find a very cool hiking spot. In fact, the number of foreign visitors to Bukhansan, Bugaksan, and Gwanaksan last year increased by 829% compared to 2022. So that's amazing. It really shows that people are much more interested these days in local outdoor activities.
So it's amazing how the everyday routines many Koreans actually might take for granted have become must-do experiences for overseas visitors. So if someone wants to enjoy Korea like a local, where should people start? Where do people want to start? And that's why we wanted to hear directly from our viewers on this. So we ran a poll on the Arirang News YouTube channel asking which Korean lifestyle experience would you most like to do while visiting Korea? And here's what the results showed. So majority of respondents, 56%, chose Korean food. Relaxing at the Han River Park came next at 24%, followed by Korean beauty and hair salons at 14%. Shopping ranked fourth, with 6% selecting it as their top choice. So Korean cuisine clearly remains the biggest draw, no surprises there, but it is nice to see everyday experiences like relaxing by the Han River ranking so highly as well. So to better understand this trend, we're going to be joined by someone who actually visits Korea quite often, and their insights are coming up right after a break, so don't go anywhere.
NewsGen wants to hear from you. Go to YouTube and search out channel Arirang News. Click Posts and cast your vote in the poll. Make a new type of news with us.
We're now joined by Petra, a travel blogger from Thailand who's visited Korea many times. So hello, Petra. Thank you so much for connecting with us today. So Petra, how many times have you visited Korea? And when you do come to visit Korea, do you usually travel like a local?
I've been to Korea 18 times since 2000.
18.
And I do travel like a local now because that's part of my job as an immersive travel blogger. But the first few times I actually went with like K-pop tours where they get you into the recording of music back and stuff like that. Traveling like a local actually came more slowly to me after visiting more times and knowing more about the history. And at the same time, just, running out of touristy things to do. So it was automatic that I started paying attention to more local things.
What would you say are the benefits of traveling like a local, and how do you actually do it? What is the difference?
I would say traveling like a local is just more impactful. Like when you're traveling like a tourist, you are your own priority because the place is there to entertain you. Like how something appears to you is the most important thing. Like, wow, Gyeongbokgung is so pretty, and that's all that's important, right? But pretty has an expiration date. So one day when you arrive back home and you see your dog running towards you and you're like, oh my God, I missed you so much, and you've forgotten about most of Gyeongbokgung. But like when you're trying to assimilate to some degree, you start paying more attention to your environment. your priority is now in how the locals are going about their days. What significance does the place have to them? And you're curious and you want to learn more. And that kind of knowledge, I think, stays with you for much, much longer after the fact. And it also expands your ideas and changes how you interact with the world. Just that kind of impact. I personally love chilling at cafes nowadays. I've definitely had ramyeon and fried chicken by the river. I also love walking along Cheonggyecheon at night. I especially love hiking the city wall at Naksan Park. I also, when I was living there a few years ago, I love spending every Sunday at a Jjimjilbang as well.
Yeah, I think you gave some great recommendations and some really interesting insights. So thank you for that. My last question for you would be, what would you recommend to people who want to travel like a local in Korea?
I think the better you know the culture, the easier it becomes to slip into the local mode, which is a paradox because the most important tourist sites tend to carry a lot of cultural and historical significance, which you need. So from my point of view, you have to cross that bridge first. Like, be the tourist, be curious about what the deal is with Gyeongbokgung, like be curious about going to the National Museum for a few days, and then you'll naturally move into appreciating everything you see more. I think watching K-dramas also helps a ton because you get to know what local life is like before you even arrive. So like when you're there, not everything is foreign and sparkly to you, but instead you start to put pieces together from what you saw on the screen and what's in front of you real time. And my last tip is a little bit extreme and a lot of work, but if anyone's up for it, I think knowing the language will take your experience to the next level. Like you get even more access to less traveled places as well because you have the leverage to explore and get lost. Because you can ask for directions, you can talk to your taxi driver, you can have random conversations with the locals about their days and where they like to go for dinner, and then you can go there too. Like randomly talking to locals didn't happen a lot to me in Seoul, but locals outside of Seoul and other cities have literally started talking to me out of the blue, and I love that experience.
It's amazing to hear what you've gained through your 18 visits to Korea. And also, before I let you go, I know a lot of Korean people obviously love traveling to Bangkok, love traveling to Thailand. What is one recommendation you have to travel like a local in Thailand?
This is tricky because the two things are one thing, they're the same thing. So it's street food. Just you gotta eat street food in Thailand, especially in Bangkok. But I would say, this is controversial. I don't know if I should say it. A lot of people love to go have street food on Khao San Road. That's no longer true because that place used to be the thing 10, 20 years ago, but now it's whitewashed. So everything you see there is a tourist trap and bars and sports clubs. So I would say avoid that.
I see. This is quite interesting. All right. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your insights with us today, Petra.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's fascinating hearing how travel becomes more meaningful when you experience a place like a local. And in Korea, the idea is now evolving even further. So what's the next step, Fabio, beyond traveling like a local?
The next step, well, now that we've talked about daylication, I feel like it's time to talk about carecation, another term. So just as the name suggests, it's all about traveling to focus on Korean-style self-care. So it's not only about shopping for fashion and beauty products, but it's also about investing in your own appearance and overall well-being through beauty and medical services. And in fact, spending in this sector has increased by 71% compared to last year. Skin treatments account for the largest share, but vision correction procedures or professional makeup services are also very popular, probably thanks to the excellent quality and the very affordable prices that one can find in Korea. And I have to admit that from my own experiences, most of the tourists that I met, they never missed a visit to a dermatologist or a beauty clinic during their stay.
Right. So to close off our discussion today then, Brooke, what are your tips for people who want to experience Korea like a local, since you've lived here as well?
I have lived here for 10 years. I think our guest really put it best. I think you shouldn't skip all of the tourist attractions because they're famous for a reason. They're beautiful. The palaces are gorgeous. You can learn so much from the museums. So definitely take some time in your itinerary to see those places, but then also set aside a few days to do some of the more leisurely fun things that we've been talking about today. I think the problem is tourists come here and they have like a ticking clock in their head, like I have to see all of Korea in 5 days. Try to get out of that mindset. Give yourself a few days for the tourist activities, and then give yourself a few days to maybe go to a baseball game, go to noraebang, go to a PCbang, my personal favorite thing to do. Just find time to actually experience it like a local. Also, like she said, I think learning the language can help, even just a little bit. If you learn something like 맛집, for example, which means like a really famous restaurant, if you can search that up, you can find what the locals are actually going to. And my final tip for you is don't limit yourself just to Seoul. Daylication can be anywhere, and there are so many other cities in Korea like Busan, Daejeon, which has Seongsimdang, my favorite bakery, you know, Gwangju. There's so many places you can go, so do not just stay in Seoul. If you can, if you have time, try to experience everything that Korea has to offer.
So whether you're chasing iconic landmarks or simply living like a local, the best trips are often the ones that leave you with lasting memories. As travelers continue looking for more authentic experiences, it's clear that the journey is becoming just as meaningful as the destination. Perhaps the best souvenir you can bring home is a glimpse into how people truly live. And that brings us to the end of today's episode of News Generation. But News Gen will be back tomorrow at 10:30 in Korea time with more stories and discussions. Big thanks to Fabio.
Thank you for having me.
And also Brooke.
Thank you. I'll see you next time.
And to our viewers, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully your next travel plan starts where the guidebook ends and where the local life begins. We are
News Generation.
A smile passed down to us across time. Why are people so captivated by it? In the vast exhibition hall, filling the empty space, stand just two sculptures. They are the pensive bodhisattvas, carried across some 14 centuries. Created about 50 years apart in the Three Kingdoms period, the two figures resemble each other but differ in beauty. The one on the left, from the late 6th century, wears a pointed crown engraved with the sun and moon, while a silk-like drapery flows gently over its shoulders. In contrast, the figure on the right, crafted in the 7th century, makes a striking impression with its simplicity and restraint. A plain, three-peaked crown, bare chest with only two necklaces. Unlike the lightly